Welcome once again to the Boba Joe Show.
Welcome, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well out in internet land, TV land, wherever you hail from, pay-per-view land.
Pay-per-view land. A magical land.
Kind of a special episode today, I would say.
Yeah.
It's one of those rare episodes where we actually deal with a movie that's quoted in our opening intro. So those are always the big ones.
I'll tell you a quote now, and you can tell me what movie it's from. Here we go. Give me your keys, your cats, and your toy collection.
That's from the Markinator, I believe.
Yes, that's exactly.
Or is that Markinator 2 Judgment Night?
Oh, could be. But what are we actually talking about?
We are talking about the Terminator. The Terminator.
The original.
The original. OG. Cyberdyne Systems Model 101.
Yes.
Look, I'm just going to put it out there right now. It's my favorite Terminator movie. I am one of those people who prefers it to T2. I'm one of those people, so I'm just throwing it out there. I love them both, but I just love this one teeny weeny bit more.
It's the same problem with Alien versus Aliens. Like, a lot of people like the second film the most. I like the first one the most because it's more low key, bit of a kind of ghost horror train corridor thing, whereas the second one's more big and bombastic. And it's a similar thing with Terminator 1 and 2. It's like one's kind of smaller scale, less cast and all that, and then the other one's more bang and what we're blowing the doors off and the budget's up. But they're all amazing films. I love them.
Yeah. And you can't have one without the other, and they feed off each other.
Yeah, and I feel like the kind of iconography of Terminator did, like, number 2 kind of eclipsed, like, in a lot of people's minds and the media. Like, you think of Arnold more in number 2 with the spiky hair and the leather jacket, and sometimes you even forget, well, he wore a leather jacket in the first one as well, but a different leather jacket. It's a punk.
Yes.
Or, like, different style, different era. And number 2, it's like a biker things, whereas in the first movie he starts off in the grey where he robs the like the punk guys on the street, and he has 2 outfits. He goes from the grey into the full black leather later on.
I think for me, and I was talking about this with my wife this week as well. I think the reason I love the first film so much is because it kind of feels like a horror movie a lot of the time you're watching it. Like, it's like Arnold is pretty terrifying. Like, I know we can sit here as adults now. We've both seen the film a million times over and we love it. But if you're I remember watching this for the first time as a kid and it's scaring the absolute shite out of me. Like, some moments in this movie really made me.
I mean, like, he's like, he walks and he's like emotionless and he's just like just walks in a straight line. Whatever gets in front of him, just gonna die.
Yeah, it's terrifying, and I think that's it's a beauty to this movie that was kind of maybe lost a little bit. Not so much in T2, because I think that the T1000 does an excellent, job of, being that scary bad guy robot.
Yeah, he's
in
like
the films that come after that.
Like the T1000 with old what's his face? I forgot his name now. The guy who's
Robert Patrick.
Yeah, Robert Patrick, because he's in so many things. He was in like later seasons of bloody X-Files, not the good ones. But when he's in that, they went more back to the idea of Terminator 1 when it was going to be like Lance Henriksen or a thinner person for an infiltration model, and that before it became Arnold.
Yeah, and look, maybe that's an interesting fact to bring up as well. It wasn't a guarantee from the get-go that Arnold was going to be cast in this role. As shocking as that may be to hear these days, because it just, when you think of the Terminator, very, very early in his career.
He'd done Conan and he'd done Hercules, or was it the one that goes bananas
Hercules
in New York?
He'd
done Pumping Iron.
Yes, yeah.
But he wasn't established as a star until sort of Conan, and Conan was sort of popular, but not really breakout mainstream popular. It was kind of niche popular. But Terminator was like, well, now he's a star.
Yeah, and at one point, as you briefly mentioned, Lance Henriksen was on the table for possibly playing the
Yeah. Sometimes I
lead
forget he's in the
role as the
movie as a
Terminator.
cop because he obviously a lot of them get killed.
Yes, he's one of our two feature cops along with Lieutenant Traxter in the movie, and that's another thing. Very strong supporting characters in this film, even if
Yeah.
they're not on screen for that long. You know, we've got our two cops. We've got the shrink Dr. Silverman, who's
He's got a nice paunch too. When you see it briefly, he turns around, he's got this gut hanging out, and you're like,
yeah,
what a schlub. Just, oh.
he's fond of the cakes at lunchtime.
And he's got the Costanza haircut, the bald on the top and the hair at the
Yeah,
sides. You
yeah,
just hate
it's
him
so
the moment
well
you see
written.
him.
Really strong characters, really well written characters,
Yeah.
a great
I like how
soundtrack,
some of the
a
cops are
great look.
sympathetic. Like one's like, "Hey, this guy's crazy." The other guy's like, "Shut up! I want to hear this. What he's talking about."
Yes, and of course, you know, in our other lead roles, we've got Linda Hamilton as Sarah Connor, and then Michael Biehn as Kyle
Do you know
Reese, who are
how old?
excellent
Like in real
castings.
life, she was 27. But how do you know how old she's meant to be in the film? I assume she's meant to be younger than that. I would think.
I'm guessing, and look, and this is a total guess because I honestly can't remember. I would have to guess like early 20s. She's supposed to be
Yeah,
in the
that was
movie.
my impression. It's never quite clear, but they show she's like a waitress, and that's kind of thing you do when you kind of like younger and in your career and that sort of thing.
She's yeah, like because she's got like a flatmate and stuff, so she's definitely
Yeah,
someone who's still in the younger era
yeah. They
of
show
her
with her
her
like
life.
girlfriend. They're getting ready. They got the headphones and the pop music playing, and
Yeah, and it's I remember like man, the first time I watched this as a kid, I had no idea what I was getting in for. I was kind of warned off it by my father. He's like, ah, you might not, you might want to leave that one for a while. But I was like, oh no, I want to watch it now, you know. Like, okay. And
I
yeah,
seen
like I
bits
said,
of
there
it
was
on
a few
TV when
times
I
I was
was a
just like,
kid.
no. Oh, you saw it on TV? Was it like an
Yeah, but I
accidental
saw it
viewing or?
I saw it as a kid on TV, but not the whole thing. I probably saw like a third or half of it, towards bedtime or whatever. And so it wasn't until years later I got to see it in full. And the TV network versions, of course, always censor lots of things. You're not going to see no Sarah Connor boobs or nothing in the TV version. And they're going to censor the swears and some of the. It's not gory film, but the bits where he's like cutting open his cyborg hand, or some of that stuff will be a little bit censored.
Yeah, the opening kind of moments. I know we got a brief kind of blurb at the beginning where it kind of gives you an idea of what the story is about, but
Yeah, with the text and
you know,
yeah.
it goes straight into we get the time traveling butt naked Arnold,
Yeah.
you know, landing in
I always remember
LA.
that little butt, but he's a big person and it's framed the way you kind of remember it.
But that first encounter, or you know, he has with the punks, and one of the punks is like a young Bill Paxton,
Ah,
and
yeah.
and the other punk is man, his name escapes me, but he's another guy who went on to be in stuff like X-Files and loads of stuff. I can't think of his name. But yeah, when the Terminator like rips out that guy's heart or whatever, I was as a kid, I was just like horrified, horrified. I was like 6 years old, I suppose.
Yeah, I
He
would have
was
been at
right. I
least
wasn't
9 or
ready.
10 when I seen bits on TV, so I wasn't like scared or anything, but it was just thought it was cool, but didn't get to see much of it.
Yeah, I think the idea of that kind of apocalyptic future really bothered me as a child. Like just the whole
Yeah,
ruined cityscapes and like, you know, skulls everywhere. Because, you know, I wasn't even into kind of watching regular war movies or whatever. Like, so when you see stuff like this, you're like, what is this? You know, humans living like underground, you know, eating rats, you know,
yeah.
it was
And they
just,
come out at night time because of daytime you'll be instantly
yeah,
killed.
a terrifying reality, you know, to have to face, and you know, just yeah, child me just did not know what to make of it at all, except for to be afraid of it. of course, like as an adult now, and as someone who's just gone on to watch and rewatch the movie over and over again, all the future war moments, like they probably only take up, what would you say, less than 5 minutes of actual screen
Yeah,
time. It's very little.
there's about three segments spaced out in the first half of the film, so it doesn't kind of
They're
overdo
all
it or overplay its hand.
they're all so memorable, and they just give you enough just to want more. Like
Yeah,
everything you see, you're just like, oh man, that looks terrifying. I wonder what lies beyond that wall, or I wonder what it's like, wherever. But yeah, we only really get a few minutes of those future war or those future
yeah, it's like
flashbacks, which is a weird paradox.
you get the worst stuff in like a Mad Max film and think, oh man, this is terrible and horrible, and just like turn that up to 10. It was like Future War and the Terminator. Everything's grey and everything's demolished and falling apart and everything's wrecked and just a mess, and it's eternally. So I mean, they have daytime, but I don't know how much of their daytime would be daytime because it's a nuclear. I would think it would be at least somewhat nuclear winter. I don't know if if the atmosphere would have cleared, but yeah, I imagine the daytime would still be grey and quite dark.
Yeah, no, it looks horrific, especially so in the first movie. Like I don't want to veer too off topic here, but in comparison, say, to the opening of the second movie of T2, where we kind of see a very almost even playing field of a battle between
Yeah,
humans and machines, whereas in the first movie, it's almost more like humans are like vermin. There's very few of them
yeah, they're just
around.
scrabbling about trying to do guerrilla warfare, but a lot of them are dying in the process trying to stop these
Yeah,
unstoppable machines.
and even like there's the few who are capable and fit enough to fight, but the majority that are left are like you see it in the kind of the midpoint future flashback where Reese is remembering going to the underground base, and it's like
Yeah, it's like the
mostly like
T-600
children, like starving children and all this like there's
dogs.
nothing desirable about the life that you're shown at
Yeah,
all.
it's like in those bloody Stalker games or the other ones that came later, like the Chernobyl type set video, those first person games and that, where everything's just like brown and grey and everything's just like complete mess and falling apart and everyone's terrified and starving and diseased.
There's there is just that whole, like, I know, depending on how you choose to kind of focus on these things, like it's the type of movie. I know I described it as a horror, but obviously science fiction is like the strongest main element to the movie, and
Yeah,
it's just a great time travel movie. Like, even though it might not just spring to mind straight away as a time travel movie, but as dealing with time travel, like, as a subject, as a topic, it's a great example, and also of the time paradox and that whole, like, chicken and egg scenario of
yeah, it
being
does it
caught in
really
a
well.
time loop, essentially. Yeah, it's a really nice little
It's like
contained time travel story.
your best friend you've known for years and years sends you back in time, and by the way, you happen to be your father of your best friend.
And it's great when especially if you're watching it with somebody for the first time, where they're kind of trying to put all this together and make sense of it in their mind.
Yeah, because you don't know the first time around. Even when you get to the end credits, you still don't really know that. It's really the second film that we find that out.
Well, I suppose the end scene, I suppose,
Yeah.
does confirm it. But
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
it's
you
obviously
see
like,
she's pregnant when she goes to the gas station,
and
but if you're not paying
she gets the
attention, it's
photo.
easy to just even miss the. Well, I mean, she's pregnant, but you don't know for sure that's John Connor. It could be some other kid that she loses and had John Connor, later or
True
something.
as
So you
well.
don't know
Yeah,
for
yeah.
sure. It's
But that's the thing though, and there's layers to the film, and depending on how much, I suppose, you're willing to commit and invest to paying attention to the nuance of it, because on a surface level, it also just works as a straight up action shooter movie. I mean, you've
mm,
got thrilling car chases and big shootouts, and lots of back and forth violence. So you could have been like, if you were going to the cinema back in the 80s, Depending on the type of person you are and what you were looking for, you might have just been satisfied on one level, or you could have been satisfied on multiple levels. If you're someone like me who likes action, horror, and sci-fi, I mean, you won the
And a
fucking
good
lotto
story.
going to see the Terminator. Like
Yeah.
like everything's there, everything you need.
Yeah, it kind of looks like if you were watching it back in the day and knew nothing about it, it kind of looks like it starts off like some typical grindhouse sort of movie. And apparently, some critics wrote it off on that level who didn't get it or whatever. But it's really not. It's more a story that's got more story and heart to it, and it happens to be a science fiction film. Like the story really comes first, and everything else gets wrapped around it. Whereas a lot of grindhouse stuff is just substance without any real story or character to it. Whereas this has got character, it's got good like emotional moments in it. Like there's female fans who like who've liked the kind of love story element that's quite brief of Kyle and Sarah. That's so it works on different levels than your typical action movie.
It's so good. It's so good on so many levels, and look, we mentioned Linda Hamilton, obviously. Then Michael Biehn, another fantastic casting choice for the movie. He's perfect in the role of Kyle Reese. He's so goddamn good.
Yeah, I love the
Ridiculously
scene
good
where
in the
they
movie.
capture him and he's in the police station. They're interrogating him, and then they're with Sarah in the other room and they're watching, and she's going, "So he's crazy, huh?" And the guy's like, "Yeah, he's a loon or whatever," and he really like is selling it so well where he's like screaming at them on. He's like, "No, stop asking me questions. You don't get it. It's coming. It's gonna kill it. Nothing's gonna stop it." And it's like he could be genuinely crazy, and us, the audience watching it, we've seen the bit at the start with the post-apocalyptic war stuff, so we know that's kind of real, all that's happened. And then the other key scene before we get to that, but as we see Arnold is damaged and doing stuff on himself, and we've just seen the arm where we've seen the little bits inside his wrist. If that scene had been after the interrogation scene, you could say maybe he's genuinely nuts and it's all in his head. But because it came before it, you're like, as the audience, like, oh no, we know he's telling the truth, and now we're getting that we're sympathetic that if they think he's crazy, understandably so, but we know that he's telling the truth.
They do a great job, or I should say, James Cameron, the director, does a great job in the early moments of the movie where you're not quite sure as to the nature of what Reese is up to. It's like, is he another Terminator
Yeah,
who's
we
trying to
you
kill
don't
her?
know who's the
Up until
Terminator
the
and who's
first
the
encounter.
other one. Or they
Yeah,
could
like
both
up
be
until
Terminators at the very
yeah,
beginning.
they could both be. They could both be Terminators from the very beginning, and until that famous scene in the Technor disco where we have that kind of encounter with all three coming together into
Yeah.
one spot. That's when you kind of learn. We get that great line from Reese. Come with me if you want to live. Fantastic moment, and
There's a lot of
that
confusion in
whole
that
scene
scene.
is just brilliant. Oh yeah,
Yeah, and
big
then
time.
we go from that to the police interrogation, and I'm trying to like think of it in Sarah's eyes. I don't think she really got a good look at Arnold in that scene. Like, there's so much confusion and people, so I don't think she's really clear on what the hell happened. Just that this crazy guy is like, "We've got to get out of here," and he's got guns, so I guess you're going with him.
You saw a guy got shot and get up, and
Yeah,
next thing you're like running and being like involved in car chases, and I suppose as well, like it's yeah, because it's all happening all in the one night for her.
yeah,
Like it's just like
and
everything's
even
being
the
thrown
cops.
at her.
So it's like, what about when he punched through the window? And I think it's Lance Henriksen's like, yeah, it could have been on PCP. Hey, one time this guy did this guy. You want to see this one? Another guy just cuts him off and ignores him, starts talking over him. But you can tell that James Cameron's head or Lance Henriksen that they had a story for why that scar was on his hand, and he was about to tell you.
And that's the thing. It is such a fantastical story. Like once again, so you can just think about it, like you're a cop and this guy's telling you that a machine from the future that also happens to look exactly like a human, is going to kill this woman. Like, of course, it sounds completely ridiculous.
And
Uh,
we can't
uh,
bring
uh,
any ray guns or lasers with us because they can't go through the time array. And he's like, but hey, but how did the machine get here? It's like, no, didn't you listen? The skin's over the machine. It's like, you didn't listen.
yes, it's a cybernetic organism,
Yeah,
and that's the beauty. See, and that's the great thing about the Reese character as well. It's the level of detail he goes into. Like even in the beginning when he first picks up Sarah and he's trying to explain to her what the Terminator is, and she's like, "Oh, it's like a robot," and he's like, "No, not a robot. It's a cyborg. It's
Yeah,
a cybernetic organ." Like he corrects her, he explains everything to her in implicit detail, and we also get that famous line when they're both kind of hiding in the car park, and we always see it, of course, in our Boba Joe intro, where it's like it absolutely will not stop ever
yeah, I love that
until
line.
you are dead, like, and like that is the truth, and that's one thing that theme carries through the entire movie, because no matter what happens to that Terminator, it will keep going either until the mission is complete or until it is destroyed. And that's the scariest thing of all, really,
Yeah,
about
because
it
it
as a
can't feel
force.
pain despite having skin. Feels no pain, has no emotions, has no. It's intelligent and can adapt to circumstances and learn. It's like a learning machine, as you find out more in the sequels. But it can't be reasoned with. It has programming, and it's just going to execute that program no matter what, even if it means its own demise or gets trashed in the process.
Speaking of like intelligence and knowledge and stuff like that, like this movie is obviously I have lots of friends who are a big fan of this, and we've often discussed and debated elements about it for years. Like I have one particular friend who would be a little bit nitpicky when it would come to like, storyline details and things like that. And he'd always
Yeah,
kind of complain about the fact that, oh, why does the Terminator not know more about, Sarah Connor and stuff like that? But all of
because
that
it said
stuff,
a
if you pay
line in the film that
attention,
all the records are destroyed in the future, so they don't know.
exactly, there's
There's no
loads of
society. There's no
little details.
records.
There's loads of little details like that thrown in, and plus you mentioned as well, as we find out
Said
in the
they know her
second,
name and the city where she lives, and that was it. And I was thinking, well, how the hell
yes,
would you find this? So it makes sense. He's looking through the
yeah,
phone book, and
through the phone
there's no
book,
internet back
exactly,
then. There's nothing else he could find it through.
and also another thing he would sometimes point to is the gun shop scene near the beginning of the movie
I
where
thought it
the
was very
Terminator
realistic. You
goes
want
and
some
acquires
guns? Here they
weapons.
are. 5 minutes, you're out the door. It's America.
This is the problem he had was the fact that one of the weapons that the Terminator, well, there's a couple of things. He says, first of all,
Yeah,
one of the weapons that the Terminator asks for is a
like a,
phase plasma pulse rifle, which is obviously a very futuristic weapon,
yeah,
and the store owner has to explain to them that we don't stock those.
yeah,
And my friend was always like, "Oh, well, you'd think that machine would know. Look, I'm in 1984," and I'm like, "No, it doesn't know. All it is really programmed to carry out this mission. And as it's carrying out the mission, it's going to learn things that's going to help it
yeah,
adapt
yeah.
to
Like
to
everything,
the
you see
environment
all
it's
those
in."
cool overlays, like I call it, like the Terminator or RoboCop vision, where we see his point of view, and you see little kind of programming bits down the side, and he's just observing and looking at stuff. He's like categorizing people, clothing, buildings. Everything he sees is just kind of being recorded and going in, and he's learning from it, including guns
Mm.
and weapons and
And then the final little piece of argument that usually happens around that gun shop scene is he asks for a pistol that has a laser sighting on it. And my friend's always like, well, why does he need a laser sighting? If he's this like machine and he can like aim him. And I was like, he's just asking for the model he sees in front of him, and it happens to have a laser sighting on it. I don't think he needs the laser sighting. I think that just happens to be,
the
a
correct
nice
answer
little
because it looks
accessory.
cool. It looks cool in
Yeah.
the movie poster.
But yeah, so like a lot of those little inconsistencies for one, like I said, if you pay attention and you listen out for those lines where they explain little things like that, and even Dr. Silverman, the psychiatrist, even says it's like, oh, this story's so good, it's so deep, like because he thinks that
Yeah,
Reese has constructed all this stuff just
yeah,
in his mind. So it's great that he has all these explanations, for why these events could occur.
yeah. We don't know in the first film it's a machine, but we don't know how far its vision can see. Can it like a what do you call it? Like telescope vision? Can it magnify things in the distance? We don't know. So we don't know how far it
We
can
don't
actually
know.
see. But a laser in the dark is going to go a fuckload further than any vision as far as like be able to hit something.
And look, and once again, these were like little minor these aren't like, oh, I found the hole in the plot or something like that. They're
Well, in
just like these.
ROBOCOP, we see the targeting reticule, that little square that goes around, whereas we don't really see
Yes.
that in Terminator 1. We just see his overlays and programming shit everywhere.
Yeah, no harm having a bit of extra red dot laser sights there just in case,
Yeah.
And that's
He's
another
dressed
thing
in
about this
black and
movie.
it's red and it's nighttime and it looks cool. It's like, and he's got red
The
eyes, so
weapons.
it goes with the outfit.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, the weapons in this movie are awesome. Like, so there's that pistol. There's Kyle's sawn-off shotgun that he
Yeah.
acquires from the squad car early on. We've got the Uzi 9mm also makes an
Yeah.
appearance in this movie. Lots
Another
of
shotgun,
iconic
I think.
weapons.
Harold has.
Yes,
I
yeah, he
like
uses
when
the
Reese saws off
SPAS
that
shotgun.
shotgun, the way he tucks into his coat. I just think of like Rutger Hauer in The Hitcher or something. He just looks really menacing, like, oh, this guy's shifty, man.
Yeah, and Reese, he's just trying to do a DIY job with the tools that
Yeah,
he has. Using a piece of string to like tie the shotgun under his
yeah,
coat,
I love that.
and
Just like
just
whatever's
a
just
really
MacGyver
nice
style,
touch.
whatever's around, you're going to use it. There's no time to muck about.
And it must be crazy for somebody like Reese to be walking around in 1980s LA and everything's just like so quiet, and the buildings are still here and there's actual humans walking around, and not terrified of giant machine tanks and drones that are going to like take you out if you walk outside the door.
I imagine it'd be
Like, you'd
kind of
be tempted.
traumatizing because you're seeing like the world in much better. So it'll be, but you're directly on mission to help this person out. But it must be tempting to go, fuck it, I'm just going to go live my life for the next 20
Yeah,
years until the war happens.
exactly. Yeah, I was just about to say, yeah, I'm just going to go fucking live in the mountains and
Just go to another
take care
city
of
where Sarah
myself.
Connor doesn't live and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Not my problem. I'm going there.
Yeah, just Reese, an amazing character, and like Reese and Sarah's relationship, like they obviously have great on-screen chemistry. Linda Hamilton and Michael Biehn, like it really works, and relationship does obviously have to develop very quick because all of this is really happening within the space of like a day and a night,
Yeah.
essentially, like the entire timeline of the movie. So we go from would-be rescuer to hot and heavy lovers pretty quick. But as she says at the end of the movie, they love the lifetime's worth. So they
I
had to
don't
get
find
it
it
in.
terribly unrealistic too, because when people are in times of stress and war and stuff, and it's like, well, we could be dead tomorrow, so what do we got to lose? Like,
Exactly, exactly. But movie I mentioned earlier, like in passing, like the thrills of it all, like got some excellent car chases in this movie. Probably some of the best movie car chase since like the French Connection. Like, it's
yeah, they're awesome.
really hardcore, and like you got Reese driving with one hand while like aiming a shotgun out the window, having like a dueling shotgun battle with Arnold,
Yeah,
who's driving
and I love when
simultaneously through the car park.
he's got the improvised explosives, and with first he's driving, then he goes to Sarah, change places, and they just like shuffle over while they're driving, change places. He just says it like it's the most ordinary thing. He's like probably done it before.
And like, it's just the amount of car wreckage in this movie as
Yeah.
well. I love that about old movies when you see like real cars getting
Hmm.
smashed and just
And
wrecked
then
to
you get
shit.
the truck in the later part of the film. Sometimes I forget again because of Terminator 2. There's a big iconic truck scene going through that the waterway in LA. The river overflow
Yes.
drainage system. That scene is in so many trailers, and if you see trailers for DVD, and you always see that scene. So you kind of forget there's also a scene with the Terminator in the first film when it drives a big truck as well, because it's towards the end, and I don't always think of that right away until I see it again.
And that terrified me as well the first time seeing it. Them actually on foot running from the truck while he's driving after them. Like, that's a terrifying scenario in itself.
Yeah, that's like
You don't
those
even
70s bloody movies and Duel and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. Like, it doesn't need to be a robot driving for that scenario to be terrifying.
It's Resident Evil 2 all over again. In the beginning,
Oh
it's
yeah,
like that guy's gonna ram us.
that's crazy. Why'd he bite me? But yeah, but like even like we see the holes that the shotgun makes in the side of the car and stuff like that. Like I love seeing stuff like that in old
Yeah,
movies where you can just actually see the damage that's being done by these weapons. And lots of like crashing cars, like when the cops are chasing them down and like there's like a big car crash and pile up, and like I just love all that stuff. I just love it. It's just
yeah,
you
it's
just
very
don't see it
Blues
anymore.
Brothers. Those cop cars getting trashed.
These big heavy American cars just ramming into each other. It warms my heart for whatever reason to see this vehicular carnage on the roads.
It's pretty
Even
awesome
when
what they did on. Like, I don't. It's full of practical effects, of course, which look amazing. I don't know what the budget for it was, but it's a relatively lower budget film compared to big films. But it's pretty amazing what they did with the money and time and resources they had. Like there's so much production value and all that experience of Jim Cameron working under like Corman and working on dodgy shit like Piranha and stuff like or Piranha 2, whichever one it was. But all that stuff behind the scenes, doing special effects and practical effects, it really pays off in this film because you can tell if someone else had been doing this, it would have cost a lot more and it wouldn't look half as good.
now these might be like real like ballpark figures I'm throwing out, but from memory, I think it was made for somewhere in the region of only like $6 million.
Which sounds insane.
Whereas
Like if you did something like that today, let's say it was practical, not CG. But actually, even back in like 2000, it would have been like 30 to 100 million. Like, it would be crazy money. Like, and I think
yeah,
they must
it's
have done a lot of night shooting as well, like he's done on a few films, I would think.
what you mentioned there, like Cameron did have past experience, working on productions essentially where they had a really tight budget or didn't have any money
Yeah,
at all. And like, yeah, I don't know if anybody here listening today has actually watched Piranha 2: The Spawning. If you're looking to see the origins of James Cameron, I would suggest maybe not to watch that movie. It's pretty
not,
fucking bad.
even James Cameron would
Um,
tell you not to watch it.
yeah, but it's good though for him to get his training wheels on essentially, and
Well, it's like being the work experience kid for you do a real paid big job
yes,
on your own. You're working with other people, but you're around people that have years or decades of experience. All those bloody Corman Studios and all the bloody people involved in them and other filmmakers that came out of that lot.
and like there's a very and some people might mock it these days. I know you wouldn't, and I know guys like Gojitron and other viewers of ours wouldn't
You're going
watch
to
it, but
talk
there is
bad of
very nice.
Carnosaur, are you? I won't have it.
No, no, I was going to mention the stop motion at the end of the movie. There's a
Ah, yes,
very
yes.
there's very nice Harryhausen style stop motion with that
It's probably
endoskeleton at the end.
if you when you're watching it, like I just watched it before we talked again on Blu-ray the first time as opposed to my old DVD. So it's probably of all the practical effects, it's probably the jankiest looking one to modern eyes now. But as I was rewatching, I'm going, does it actually look bad? I went, no, it doesn't look bad. It's clearly technically well crafted. Probably the thing that makes it stands out, the composite with the background on Blu-ray makes
Yes,
it
the
stand
matte.
out more than watching it
Yeah,
on CRTs or DVDs. So you've got the extra high definition, which we didn't. If you're watching this on a CRT TV back then, it looked smoother, and the same as you're
yeah,
watching at the cinema, like Blu-rays are really making those layers kind of pop out more than they naturally would.
yeah. You can all on a good Blu-ray, you can almost see like a glow coming off the
Yeah,
skeleton as it walks. 'Cause you can see the two textured backgrounds aren't matching up with
yeah.
each other.
And there's only
But
a limited amount of the stop motion, like where it's really kind of going like this, where it's legs, engine, all that. But they do make use of it sparingly and hide it well. Where when it goes to the close-ups, you just see the kind of upper torso and it's going kind of sideways. And I forget, I don't know whether it's on a dolly or a rig or they're going Muppet style and some guy just crawling along holding up the upper. I don't know because I haven't watched the behind the
or
scene
even
features a long time.
the shot of the endoskeleton emerging from the fiery wreckage of the truck, like that's all
Yeah.
done stop motion, and it looks beautiful.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
even to
That
this
bit,
day,
and
it
then
looks
you see the
beautiful.
full view when it's not in flames later walking. Then we're in the car factory when he's going sideways and you see the shoulders up. You can tell that's a full one-to-one scale model, and it looks amazing because all of a sudden it's like so much more detailed, and they really like put it up close to show you how awesome it looks.
I think also as well they do a good job with explaining the kind of janky movement of the robot,
Well, it's
because
injured. It's injured.
it's injured its leg, and we see him even in his human form, he's dragging his leg. So then they're
Yeah.
able to play into that. And I have a feeling I wouldn't be surprised if they retroactively had went back and added that in after they'd done a few test shots with
Mhm.
the endoskeleton, because they knew it was going to look like it was kind of limping, even if they didn't want it to be limping.
Yeah.
So no, I
I
think
think
it looks
the
great. I really
difference for
do.
the Harry horse and stuff. I mean, it's the same style of stop motion, but the difference is you're dealing with a metallic being rather than like the old, I don't know, like a fucking Cyclops has got flesh. But when you see the Harry horse and like, it's usually we're in a wide shot and it's quite far back. So in his movies, that would be like in a mid. It's not right at the forefront of the frame. It's in the mid to back, and there's those extra layers that they shot through practically on those Harry horse and ones. Well, they added artificial backgrounds but were physical and real and layers in real time, which is why they go together so well. But you've got the Cyclops thing has got flesh, whereas the skeletons are just all metal. So the metal, it's otherworldly. There's a little bit of that well, it's not quite Silicon Valley because it's less than human, but it's something that grabs your attention. It looks weird and scary, and it's not even fleshy. It's all the metal makes it really kind of stand out in a different way.
There's a really nice shot during that end sequence in the factory where it's like the camera's kind of looking up at Reese and the endoskeleton on a platform, and Reese kind of hits it with this iron bar, and it kind of backhands
Yeah,
him, back. And like that to me, that was like total like Jason and the Argonaut style stop
yeah,
motion, where you've got like a real actor kind of
yeah,
maybe
like the
hitting at
skeletons.
nothing, and just yeah,
Yeah.
it's just perfect timing. The
Mm.
way the
I
way they
like
pull that off.
I like also when it's coming through the wall, it puts these massive dents in the wall. Then a hand busts through and kind of reaches in and moves the lever. It's like the hands coming through is just like Night of the Living Dead. I love it.
Yes, yeah,
Such a class. It's been
and
used in so many films. I don't know if it's intentional or just it's just the way they're showing what's happening. But I can't not that horror element. I can't not think of Night of the Living Dead seeing the hand bursting through a wall or in Resident Evil and that.
I know we are kind of jumping all over the place with this, but there's so many things that you can kind of pick and but like yeah, it's because that whole final sequence in that factory, once again, terrifying stuff, because first of all you have that reveal of the metallic endoskeleton coming from under the flesh, but also later on when you think Reese has actually managed to destroy the Terminator and Reese himself is dead, and you think, okay, that's it. It's definitely over. The film is over.
Yeah,
And
don't
next thing
take
you've
an
got like,
explosive to the face, people.
yes, yeah, but we got the severed Terminator torso then waking up and coming after Sarah Connor for those final moments, which is also a terrifying, sequence of events to witness as well. So no, it's an amazing movie for just the thrills and the spills of it all. And every time I watch it, I'm still just like amazed by how they pulled off some of this stuff, because it just looks so goddamn good. Like I just love the look of this film on so many
That's a
levels.
beautiful film. Like I
Beautiful.
just watched it on Blu-ray today, and like the picture quality is like really beautiful on it. And watching those scenes with like Lance Henriksen in the police station and that, and he's younger, but he was still born an old wrinkly man when you see him. But the picture quality is amazing, and it looks like it's so well shot and so beautiful.
Speaking of the police station, I know I mentioned earlier that the future war flashbacks were some of my favorite scenes, but it's the actual police station massacre that's my favorite scene in the movie. I think it's unbelievable. It's probably the best scene for me
It's
in
so
in
good
any
that they repeat
Terminator
it in
movie.
number 2 and 3.
Yeah, except in the difference we get in number one is this time we have a Terminator that is definitely the villain and definitely doesn't
Yeah,
give a shit about human lives. There's no little counter saying human casualties is 0% in this one. From that very moment, he goes up to the cop at the desk like, "I'm a friend of Sarah Connor. I was told she was here. Could I see her, please?" And the cop's like, "No, no. She's in there taking a statement. You can't see her." And he's like, "I'll be back." We get that iconic "I'll be back," and he
do you know
fucking
the
drives
story
the
around the
station wagon.
Do you know the story around the "I'll be back" line, as in not in the film but in real life, where Arnold and Cameron went back and forth on how he should be saying it.
Is it the McBain Simpsons part, like "I will be back" or "I'll
Yes,
be
exactly.
back"? Is it?
That's it. Because he talks about in his biography, like the one his autobiography, and he says it was written, "I'll be back," but when they went to shoot the scene, because he was Austrian and trying to speak good English and had obviously been practicing his English throughout the 70s into the 80s to get better, he said, "I will be back." And Cameron's like, no, I'll be back, it's saying more phonetically. And he's like, no, it should be, I will be back. It's incorrect, sort of thing, like trying to argue like in that German kind of way, like, no, this is incorrect. But Jim Cameron's like, look,
Maybe
I wrote it and that's why it should be. And then he didn't agree with him. But when he saw the finished film, he's like, oh, yeah, Jim Cameron was right. I should have definitely said it that way.
I suppose from the machine maybe would speak perfect English, but then again, it is also a learning machine, so he would have picked up
Yeah.
slang and colloquialisms with these phrases.
But imagine if it had been, I will be back, and been more robotic, but not as memorable. And it just never would have been that callback line on the other films and then on to other Arnold films.
There is one. It's the only really, to me anyway, obvious lack of continuity in the movie is actually that moment where he rams the car into the desk at the police station, because when you see the shot of the guy behind the desk, he's actually lit up by the lights of the car coming through the window. But when you actually cuts to the car coming through the window, the lights are off. It's the only time
Oh,
you can
I
say
didn't
that.
notice that, and I just watched. I should have picked up on that.
Now,
I
maybe
love seeing
though,
stuff like that.
maybe you could say that maybe the lights got smashed in when it went through the actual glass, but I just think they might have
Maybe.
missed that in the
Yeah,
continuity possibly. But yeah, that cop station massacre, like that is something else. When he's got an SPAS, with SPAS 12 gauge shotgun in one hand. I think he's got like an FAL rifle in the other, and he's like literally, gun in each hand, iconic, going down the corridors,
yeah.
boom, 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 boom.
Like
All the
they call
cop.
back
It's
to
like a video game. It's like
yeah,
cops jumping out from behind the wall. And
they call back to another Terminator films, but it's never as good as that sequence. In number 3, there's a bit where he carries a big coffin and he opens that up and it's got a massive gun in it. And there's a bit in Terminator Genesis where he's got a big, oversized novelty stuffed bear like you'd win at the fair. But it's so obvious from this, it's nearly as big as him. If you saw someone walking through any kind of secure area carrying that under your arm, it's obviously a fucking weapon hiding in there. It's so stupid that no one stops him.
I love I love during that pop station shootout, we got to see just how much damage the Terminator can actually take. Because there's like a moment where
Yeah,
he literally turns his back on the cops as they're shooting at him, while he can pull the plug for the electricity, like to knock out the power to the whole station. And the cops are there like shooting him in the back, and you can just hear the bullets like hanging and ricocheting off him, and he's not even flinching. He's just taking it.
yeah,
It's amazing. And then he'll just turn around. There's a great tracking shot where we see cops shooting at him, and the cop goes to run, and the Terminator tracks him through the wall and shoots him through the wall. Like that's a
yeah, that's
fucking
awesome.
brilliant moment. Like just yeah, that whole police station shootout, and it's so tense because the
And
whole
then you
time
see
you're
you
like,
see
okay,
Sarah hearing all the gunshots, and that's the moment she realizes he's not crazy, and it's fucking real.
and like you're feeling it for her as well, because it's like, okay, so Reese is, as far as she knows, he's locked up, and now she's like alone
Yeah,
essentially because all the cops are fucking dead, and is she going to get out of this? Which thankfully she does, because Reese is able to knee that dude in the gut
I,
and get his keys and escape. So
yeah, I like the scene where she's hiding under the desk, and she can hear all the carnage down the hallway, all the shotgun blasts and guys yelling, screaming, and dying. And she sees someone walking past who stops to look in the room, so she hides under the desk. And you don't know as a viewer who it is, but you see a silhouette, and you can see the silhouette skinnier. And like, it's like, oh, it must be Kyle coming to help her, and it is.
yeah, it's such a relief, that moment where they managed to actually get out of the cop station as well, because it's just, I know I keep on describing it as a massacre. It is a massacre. Like
Yeah, it is.
he kills a lot of cops, in that moment. Like that would be the type of thing. Like it's almost the equivalent if you're playing like a GTA game and just going
Yeah.
crazy, and like that's the level of carnage that we're talking about. It's unbelievable.
Yeah,
and
it's
just
like
the
I've
whole
played that and bloody Vice City, Tommy Vercetti and the Miami-Dade police station guns
yeah,
got pop, pop, pop.
we feel bad for Lance Henriksen's character as well, because him and
Yeah,
Lieutenant Traxter get gunned down. Of course, even though they have their body armor on, it's still not enough to stop the onslaught of the Terminator during that scene.
for once, Lance Henriksen gets to be like a nice guy instead of like a bad guy. I mean, he's not always a bad guy, but often he's a bit sinister in his films. But he gets to be like a regular dude in this film for a change.
Yeah, it's his most normal guy role I've actually
Yeah,
ever seen him in, I think. Like he's nice in Aliens, but he is also an android as well. So like,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
not exactly like a
He's
normal
not based
guy.
on a nice man and Alien.
Yeah. But yeah, that whole cop station scene, man, it's just unbelievable. And the music that we have to mention as well, Brad Fiedel or Brad Fidel, whatever way you want to pronounce his name, his score for this movie is
Oh,
just
it's such a great score.
perfect. It's just perfect. It's unbelievable.
I
I'm
love the
listening to
way
it
it
all the
goes
time.
from like the background behind us here. We got the tech noirs in the club when they first run into each other. You get some kind of like clubby music there would make sense for there. We get little like bits of pop music and stuff in the background, which is just background music, not so much score. But then when we get the Future's little scenes, they have their own little individual bits of score, which is very much that tech noir kind of sound, which I think of not as club music as that like ethereal technology future war theme. And a lot of the video games, Terminator 2, they use like similar. They do sound alike kind of bits of score, and that are very much based on this.
The actual though pop music that we do here on the radio and in Technor is great music too. It's actually
Yeah, yeah,
is it like Hanahi Kane or somebody like that? It's really nice. There's Burning to the Third Degree, I believe is the name. And You Got Me Burning. Great
yeah.
song. Great song.
Yeah, and when she's getting ready with the girlfriend, like they've got the headphones, and you hear a little bit of some music too. I forget what it was, but it was another like music from the era, that
Yeah,
someone
I
would be
think
listening to.
like the same artist who sings the You've Got Me Burning, like she's got maybe 3 or 4 songs that appear throughout the movie, and in
Yeah,
different scenes you'll hear really good songs, like they would fit in perfectly in Vice City or any of those type of,
yeah.
if you're playing that.
And
Just,
the
I suppose, look,
opening
it
the
was in
opening
the 80s,
credits have
so
the big iconic music, which they kind of do remixed in different versions of number two and the sequels and that. But we get the first like real bass heavy like dum 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 kind of music coming in the opening credits,
yeah, it's a lot more
like drums
I
and
suppose drums and a bit more mechanical sounding than it sounds in the
yeah,
other movies. There's a machine like element to it
yeah.
in this movie.
And
But
the
even
awesome text scroll where it's real slow motion up so close you can't even tell what the letters are at first. But the opening's just like so cool.
yeah, it's actually a really nice. I know we love talking about our fonts on this show, but like they're really nice. Yeah, it's like almost that. I don't know how you'd even describe it. Like this, the
Fat letters.
scientific lettering that they use to do the credits, and it's really nice how they deliver the opening credits, and the actual Terminator logo itself has that Transformers metallic sheen to
Yeah,
the
yeah.
writing. It's just
Yeah, it
a
has that
really
like
nice touch.
airbrush European sort of art look with the metallic shine.
No, I absolutely love it. And there's a
Heavy
lot of
metal magazine. That's the sort of thing
heavy
I think of
metal,
like
exactly.
the
But there's as a story kind of concept. I know we mentioned, earlier on, like at one point Lance Henriksen was on the table to actually be cast as the Terminator, and that was during the time that Cameron kind of had in his mind. Well, look, if the Terminator is an infiltration unit, he would probably look more like just your regular run-of-the-mill
yeah,
dude, not like a big buff Austrian guy that kind of
it would stand out.
stands out. Yeah, but he kept
Even
that
like
idea.
in the sequels, they're
He
like,
kept
"There's
it
that
for
giant guy
T2.
again."
Yeah, exactly. But he did keep that idea in his mind, and that's the reason why Robert Patrick was cast as a
Yeah,
T1000 and
yeah, I
T2, because
like
he
that they
just looked
call
like
back
an
to that.
average guy.
And then was kind of it's like in the first one, Kyle Reese is really he could have been the infiltration model as well.
Yes, yeah, he's just regular looking dude, you know, for want of a better term. But yeah, I like this. Yeah, he did that callback for T2, and you know, he went back to some things that were unrealized. Another unrealized moment, and I'm sure this is on your Blu-ray, but you definitely probably have seen it if you have the DVD, the old DVD special edition of this. But
Yeah, I got the old
there is
DVD as well.
actually the end of this movie when you see Sarah Connor being taken out of the factory and put into the ambulance. Have you ever actually seen the full uncut version of that scene, how the movie actually was supposed to cut off there?
I'm not sure. Like I've watched more than 10 years ago. I watched a heap of special feature stuff, but I don't even remember it now. But if it
So
was on there, I would
basically,
have watched it.
it shows her she's been loaded into the ambulance, and she looks over and she sees, you know, Kyle in a body bag being zipped up, and that's all we would usually see in the regular cut that we see. But in the full scene, and you can watch it all in the deleted scenes and the special features, the camera actually pulls back and does a wide shot, and we actually see that the name on the factory is Cyberdyne. So it's a Cyberdyne owned
Nice.
factory that last battle has taken place in. And that's the reason why in T2 that Miles Dyson has the severed arm and the
Yeah.
chip, because it was Cyberdyne who actually owned the factory where the incident
Well,
took
that makes
place in.
sense
And that,
because I always wonder.
so now that,
In the second one, you know, they're crooked where they would think she's crazy, but then they see they've got this hand in this case. So I think, well, how did they actually get it?
yeah, so this is another one of those chicken and egg um, type of situations where it's like, oh, if that final fight hadn't taken place in that particular
Yeah.
factory, maybe Cyberdyne would not have gotten their hands, because by the looks of things, Cyberdyne was more like a regular type of chip manufacturer, nothing special in
Mm.
robotics or anything like that. But by pure chance, this futuristic tech is just found crushed in one of their factories, and they're able to, like, you know, appropriate it and examine it and study it and make use of it. So I just thought that was a nice touch that Cameron was actually thinking that far ahead, that
Yeah,
he
that's
had
pretty cool.
intended that that factory was a Cyberdyne factory. Pretty cool.
I also like that in some of the later films that you see stuff in the side of the head. He's got like a little divot in there, and sometimes they pull a chip or put something in. But that same cavity's in there in the first film in the side of its head. It's almost like an
The
expansion port or something.
yeah, that's exactly what it's like. Do your little USB slot for your updates and that type of thing. But the we mentioned this, I think, a little bit when we had our T2 discussion, but the actual mechanical design of the Terminator endoskeleton is really well done. Like, and if you even get like an action figure that's based off the movie model, you'll even see how it's designed, where, like, you know, the pistons of the arms do move up and down when you move the
Yeah, it's
arms, and
got
like you
proper
can
looking
see all the
hydraulics.
yeah, like there's proper hydraulics and interconnectivity. It looks like if this was a real thing, that it could actually move and function. Like, it's a well
Mm.
designed you know, piece of kit, which is something, you know, Cameron would carry on into other films, you know, like Aliens, like T2. He was good at, you know, even if it's going to be like futuristic tech, it's still futuristic tech that, you know, could exist and, you know, could work if it
Yeah,
did
well, it's still
exist.
based on like anatomy and physics and actual science, even if it's like made up future science. You know.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good. And like I said, for me, this first movie always just takes the nudge over the second movie for me just a little bit. But it's like Alien and Aliens, like you mentioned earlier, and it could even depend on how I wake up in the morning. I could prefer T2 on a certain day, um, but there's just something about the whole vibe of this first one that just really, like, it just does it for me. Sorry, my little cat's calling me here. I'm just going to go for a second just
Yeah,
to let her out. One sec.
no worries. Lovely cats sitting there with Mark. I don't know how many cats are calling out. My little Pedro is having a sleep or possibly running around here as well. Yeah, I love like the first Terminator and the first Aliens are kind of like similar horror kind of style, and then the second films for both, you kind of get more a light-hearted thing. It's still grim and people dying, but you've got more comedy and levity. I was just saying how like your first Alien, second one, first Terminator, the second one, very similar. How like first films like real straight horror action, grim, people dying, and then the second films you've still got carnage, but like you've got more light-hearted moments, even a little bits of comedy and one-liners and that, but still a grim end result or future from the in moments in the sequel film was still grim, even if it's like the second film's like got more stuff that's like just like over the top action, and then there's like a bit of a one liner, a bit more of an Arnold film than just a Terminator horror film.
And I suppose that's the thing with this first movie in particular. Even though Arnold was on the ascent, he was not the household name that he
Nah.
would become. This was actually the movie that pretty much, made him the household name.
It could
that
also
he
have
would become.
broken them.
Like,
If the movie had failed, it could have stuffed them both as being actors or directors. They could have been the end of the road for them. They could have other projects, but if they hadn't taken off from the show, both of them might not have got on to other, such good stuff.
now, it was the start of a beautiful relationship between Arnold and James Cameron, and maybe
Yeah.
one of these days on the Boba Joe show we should indulge in True Lies, which is another Arnold and James
Might as well.
Cameron get
He rides a
together. So
horse. Apparently, he really rode the horse, and at least some of that. I mean, it's still stuntmen, but he apparently rode the horse and did some of the actual stuff in that crazy stunts opening.
yeah, like this movie though, it was such a smash, and it was such a hit that it got the ball rolling for Arnold becoming like the de facto action movie star for a long time. It really just propelled him, right up the ladder as far as Hollywood careers go,
Yeah.
and deservedly so as well. Because some people like back in the day they'd make the joke is like, oh well, it's not really much acting for him because he acts like a robot anyway. It's like no, he's a good actor, and he does manage to pull off the whole what he's supposed to do, and he
Well,
does it
not
very
not
well.
many people could be that emotionless and robotic on purpose consistently throughout a film. And I would put that down to his bodybuilding training and competitions, because there you've got to be really like you're posing or whatnot, but you have to like he talks about in his books, you've got to be pretty much emotionless and not attached to the outcome of what's going on, and completely focused on what you're doing and in the moment. And to do the Terminator, you got to do the same thing. Be completely focused and not let normal distractions and emotions and whatever. Obviously, between takes, I probably had some jokes and laughs and that, but on camera, he's got to be completely serious and focused, like a professional athlete.
100%. And this is like it's a real it's like the James Cameron regular crew almost getting together here for the first time, or maybe not the first time, but one of the early times, because we've got James Cameron himself, Lance Henriksen, he's going to work with again in other movies, Michael Biehn, he's going to work with again, Linda Hamilton, he's actually going to marry, I think, at some point.
Yep. Bill Paxton.
Gail Ann Hurd, Bill Paxton. Like, there's so many people involved in this that they're all going to go on to continue to work with Cameron and be in other great Cameron movies. Like, of course, like Michael Biehn is fantastic in Aliens as Corporal Dwayne Hicks.
What's your other favorite roles he's in? Oh, sorry, other than Aliens.
So other than Aliens and Terminator, I'll tell you, my next favorite big Michael Biehn role is The Abyss.
Yes, I forget he's in that.
He is so crazy in The Abyss. Like,
That
he's
finally
a proper...
got a Blu-ray a couple of years back or whatever, because that wasn't on for the longest time. People are going, give us a bloody Abyss on Blu-ray. And James Cameron was too busy under the bloody sea hanging out there, or Little Mermaid and whatever else he was doing for years.
Yeah, he was too busy visiting the real Abyss to actually
yeah, the real Abyss.
The fictional Abyss. But yeah, like Michael Biehn's character in The Abyss, he's like a Navy SEAL guy who pretty much loses his mind in the tight confines of underwater activity they're big for. It's a great role for him. But like, he's in so much good stuff, and even when he's in kind of stuff that's not great, he himself is pretty great. Like, he turns in a pretty decent performance in Planet Terror while he's in it, and he also appears in like
the Rodriguez
he's in the Rodriguez one. He's in
I didn't remember
The
being.
Rock, with Nicolas Cage and Sean
Oh, I
Connery.
love
He's
it.
in The
I'm going to
Rock.
watch
He's
The Rock
another.
again this week, actually, because I've been watching James Bond movies with Sean Connery in my box sets, and I was like, what else is there? Oh, I've got to watch The Rock again.
And yeah, he's a Navy SEAL in The Rock. And of course, speaking of Navy SEAls, he actually stars in the movie Navy SEAls
Maybe
with
see.
Charlie Sheen. So
Nice.
yeah, he's in lots of good stuff. But yeah, my favorite roles will always be Kyle Reese and Corporal Hicks from Terminator and Aliens, respectively. And of course, if you've watched the director's cut of T2, he does also appear in T2 in dream sequences with Sarah
Yeah,
Connor
I've
as
definitely
well.
seen
So
those extra scenes and whatever on the featurettes.
yeah, love the guy. But yeah, it's a real it is a real kind of Cameron get together. It's funny, like
Oh, is it? So he's technically an Alien 3 then, by the same reasoning as well, isn't he?
he technically is because they did have to pay for his likeness.
Yeah.
They only use a photograph of him at the beginning of Alien 3.
And I think originally they weren't going to pay no one, and someone's agent found out and
Yes.
said, "Hang on, you better be paying this fella."
Now, maybe you'd have to ask the man himself what he thinks, or maybe someone who is in the know. But my theory always was that if he had kept his mouth shut about that money, he might have had maybe a bit of a better career. Maybe I'm just putting that out there because
Yeah.
did you ever notice that after that he was not in as much high profile roles as he
Yeah.
had been
Well,
previously?
studios
I
will fuck
wondered,
people over.
yeah, I'm pretty sure that 20th Century Fox were like, oh, well, fuck this guy. Just because he's legally entitled to this money doesn't mean we want to give it to him. So let's just
Yeah.
fuck him over,
So, doesn't remind me of like recent years and all the strikes about movies not trying to pay residuals and bloody Black Widow and what's her name, Scarlett Johansson wasn't getting paid but money properly from it and all this other shit, and same shit, different day.
Yeah, there just be shady shit like that going on and people being owed money and, not being paid what they should be. But no, he made a splash in this movie to be sure. Um, is it? I'm now. It's one of my favorite films ever. Is it my favorite Arnold film ever? It's probably neck and neck with Predator. I find it difficult
Yeah.
sometimes to choose between one or the other.
I'm gonna get some posters I was looking at this week. Like I'm gonna get some like frames to put on the wall and that, and I was looking at all the different ones, like which is more iconic. Like as a poster, it's like Terminator, Commando, Predator. It's like well, when you look at them, they're all three of just some like
Yeah,
muscly as hell and doing a pose in a black background, and depending on which version you look at. But they're all just so iconic when you look at the posters and him in that era.
that original that Terminator poster with him just holding the pistol like that.
Yeah,
We
that's
can
my
even
favorite. Like
yeah, we see
it's
it
got the
here
red,
in our
got
in
the
our
red background,
background.
the kind of triangle laser thing going in the background.
What do you think of the fact that in the glass of his sunglasses you can actually see it's CSM 101, Cyberdyne Systems Model 101? Yeah, that's a great touch for the poster. I always like that.
Yeah, that's awesome because it almost looks
You
like
never
a
see that in the movie though,
ref-
thankfully,
reflection
because that
or
would look
whatever.
stupid. Yeah, really, I just love that kind of grimace on his face as well. He's like, I'm gonna
And is
kill
it
you.
when do we first see like the red eye coming through the glasses? Is that Terminator 2? Or because he loses his eye and then he puts the sunglasses on to cover up the fact that he's lost his eye so he can still be in disguise. But you don't see the red glow, but that becomes a thing we see in lots of other stuff and other
The red,
films and posters. They see the eye shining through the glasses.
we we first get a glimpse of that during the future flashback scene where Reese remembers the Terminator storming the
Yeah.
base, because you get the shot of the Terminator kind of killing everybody and you see his silhouette, but you can actually see the two red
Yeah,
dots
that's
of the
right. See the
eyes
glowy eyes
coming
there,
through.
which is
Yeah,
funny because he's got as a cyborg, he's got like he's got an eye just like ours, but over top of it entirely another eye in his middle skull, which is weird to think about. He's got
yeah,
like four eyes.
yeah. Yeah, I dare you to call him Four Eyes right to his
Well,
face.
if he's got his sunglasses on, he'd be six eyes.
Yeah.
But because I just watched it then, I was watching that scene where he gouges out his own eyeball into the sink, and they cut away from it, so it's not too graphic. But I was thinking, wait a minute, he's got this other machine eye. He's actually got 4 eyes, which I haven't really thought about before.
We also get that nice moment where he's flicking through the address book, and you see the fly like landing on his head, and he doesn't even do it because he's a robot. He doesn't give a shit, so he just lets the fly like crawl across his face. Really nice touch.
They kind of play it up more in the second film with the T-1000, how he does the voice disguise, but he does it at least 2 or 3 times in this film too. Yes. He does the disguised voices like Sarah's friend or whoever else, and over the phone line we get a brief bit of phone acting. But that's another awesome capability, that he's a machine. He can just like mimic or record other people's kind of voices and say something with their voice.
It's actually funny that you mention now. It's one kind of it's not a major moment in the movie, but I suppose it's a major moment for the character. But like, the Terminator actually does murder Sarah Connor's mother in this movie, because that moment you just mentioned where he's doing the pretend voice, like he's pretending to be her mum, and we see that he's sitting in a room where he's after like shooting in the windows and stuff. Like, so her Sarah Connor, now that I'm after thinking about it, she probably would have only found out later on in the hospital. It's like, oh yeah, by the way, that robot that was trying to kill you, he actually went to your mum's house and killed her too. Sorry about that.
It's like, what a hell of a like when we get to the end, we see her driving in a Jeep or whatever the hell it is at the service station, but we see her belly. You see that she's pregnant some times past. Kyle Reese is dead. We presume he's the father, obviously, from the kind of love scene earlier. And it's like, oh, also your mother's dead. It's like, Jesus, like what? And we presume that like probably her flatmate, she's probably, whether it's on the screen or not, she's dead as well. She's like,
she's 100%. Yeah, her flatmate was killed. The flatmate's boyfriend was killed. Yeah, it was.
Oh yeah, that was right at the start. That's right. He's getting thrown around through the wall and that. But like so many people did, and she's lost like anyone she knows basically. Well, we don't know the extended family that, but anyone she knows is pretty much dead.
And then, according to P2, years later, she's going to be caught trying to blow up a Cyberdyne factory, and she's going to be incarcerated in a mental institution for a long time. So she's just having a fantastic life.
Interesting for them, because if it was this era, you'd be like, Guantanamo Bay, bye, never see you again. You're not going to the mental cell because you're a terrorist. You're trying to blow up a factory.
But that's brilliant, though, that once again it goes back to that. It's funny that he didn't include it, because it's only a few extra seconds of footage where it says it's a Cyberdyne factory, because that ties in once again. She obviously was trying to go back to that same factory to destroy it.
Yeah, I guess it's just running time. I guess you're always making little cuts here and there for total running time.
Yeah. You're shaving off pieces here and there.
So it was like 1 hour 50 on the version I just watched on the Blu-ray.
Oh, I didn't even realize. See, that's the beauty of the movie as well. It's so fantastically paced that it just flies by.
It does. It really does.
Like from the moment that the action kicks off, it's pretty much just non-stop. Like the pace just never lets up at all. It's fantastic. It really is. You okay there, Brody Bear? I got 2 little bears.
He's just repositioned. He's killed from one way to the other way. Beautiful boys. Oh.
Yeah, the Terminators, they don't like dogs, but hopefully they leave our cats alone.
Yeah, you do see one other little dog at the start, a little yappy dog on the lawn, but I think that's one of the few things that survives, possibly, because they don't really see the dog. They just walked past it. It's like it's the other Sarah Connor that gets shot at the start.
In one of the future flashbacks, we do unfortunately see him gun down a couple of guard dogs that they have in like the human base, which is never a nice thing to have to hear. You don't actually see it, but you hear the whimper of the dogs. You know that it happens.
I do like though that at the end of the movie, with Sarah Connor has a new dog that we've never seen before, so it's nice where you get like a slight reprieve, and it's like, oh, here's another animal that is alive. I feel like Cameron like balances things out that way. He's not doing a John Wick.
Yeah, we don't need all that, violence against animals in our movies. I never even in the second movie in T2, I never liked the idea of T-1000 killing John Connor's dog or anything like that either. So, yeah, it's just not my thing. Just not my thing. The old animal death and violence.
I could watch horror movies and slashes and people getting bloody slaughtered from guts to guts sometimes. But if they're hurting animals, like often I can't watch it, or I'll actually turn away and not watch it.
Yeah, it's like when we reviewed John Carpenter's The Thing. The only moment in the movie that ever gets me is when McCready accidentally shoots one of the dogs when it's been taken.
Yeah.
It's like, oh no, the dog. So I don't care the rest of his die, but not the dog. But yeah, no, look, the Terminator, what an absolute masterpiece of a movie. Like really just
It's so good,
a
and it's
fantastic
aged
film.
like a fine wine. That's just infinitely re-watchable and re-enjoyable. Like I've picked up all the Terminator films in Blu-ray in the last 12 months, even the ones that I consider if you're not canon, basically shit film. But $5 is still a cheap action movie. I'm going to get it.
Oh yeah. And what I would say to people who were probably like a lot of us not very impressed with a lot of the movies that came after number 2.
Well, I just call them
If you
studio
are,
sequels. That's what I call most
yes,
sequels these days.
the
Just
story
needless studio
really,
sequels.
the important story that you need to know and that matters, it ends with T1 and T2. That's all you really
Yeah,
will ever
and well,
need to
they
watch.
haven't done anything new since then. All they've done, you can watch each one they've made afterwards, and all they've done is recycle elements from those two films and not
Yes.
do anything new. Each one is just a remix of what we've already seen. So they're
I will say
creative
though,
dead ends.
if you are like us and you're somewhat disappointed with the sequels, what I would recommend is if you go back in time a little bit, and me and Johnny may have discussed this, we did a Dark Horse Comics kind of
Yeah,
discussion a
I'll
few months
post
ago.
that in the description when the video is uploaded. I'll chuck in links to the Terminator 2 talk and the Dark Horse comics
Yeah,
talk in it as well.
because there is good Dark Horse Terminator material that was
Oh, there's
released
loads of
after
them.
the first film, and it's I'll just put it out there, it's a lot better than the actual movie sequel. So if you
Oh, it
want to
sure
read,
is. Same with the
yeah,
Predator and the
good
Aliens
stuff.
comics and that. And I was thinking about this earlier today, and the bit. I don't think they'll ever make a good Terminator film again. I'm sure they'll crank another one out in 5 or 10 years. The only way I can see a genuinely good film being made, like a good film, not a studio shitty sequel, would be an entirely new cast, entirely new director, writer, producer, whoever, people that have nothing to do with the other films, like for a different generation, forget us. And it doesn't have to be based on a Dark Horse comic, but I mean, it could be. There's 10, 20 years worth of stories to pilfer from, just like how Marvel and DC can pilfer from their own stories. But to have an entirely new, different cast, different story, and make it more like the old Star Wars novels and expanded universe. Just don't even connect it to. Just have it be a Terminator film, but not connected in any way to these cities, events, just a new story, different location. Just the only connection is it's Terminators and there's going to be future war, and tell an entirely new story. That would be like what I would do if you said, how would you make an actual decent film today? Like, don't stop remixing what we've already seen like 6 or 7 times now.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, and I'd also maybe add possibly to maybe drift a bit more back into the horror elements of the original one, and maybe
Yeah,
stop trying to always go bigger and badder than T2, because you
yeah,
can
that's
never
the other
really beat.
mistake with
You
the
can't.
studio sequels to try and make it too big instead of making it simpler.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes going back to the basics is what will steer you right, but it's we know already you're not going to beat T1 and T2. Like it's an impossible feat to
Yeah,
achieve. So you can only hope on being second
even James
best.
Cameron never bettered them with his other films.
Yeah. Though James Cameron, he's not infallible. He will from time to time be convinced to come out and endorse bad movies for money,
Yeah, that's true. I just watched him at Genesis this week, and he's
Yeah,
on that going, "Oh yeah, this was great." And well, I was like, "No, it's not. Stop lying."
yeah. It's really not. It's really not at all. And I hope you got
I
a
was
nice big
contractually obliged to
paycheck.
come out of the ocean for 5 minutes and do this little vignette for your stupid fucking movie.
Now I'm going to jump back into the abyss.
Yeah, you're gonna
Yeah.
go back in there and hang out with Merman, Little Mermaid, and God knows what else down there.
Well, look,
The Meg, you might be with the Meg. I watched 2 of them this week.
will we will we give our viewers a little potential spoiler about what we might be talking about
Yeah,
next
well,
week?
we'll give them more in a spoiler. So over the next coming weeks, in no particular order, we're going to do. We've got Commando, Rambo, or Rambo Commando, if you like saying them together. Bloodsport, Invasion USA. But we're going to spin the wheel around, and I don't have an actual wheel, so just imagine it. And Mark's going to pick one of these little roulette wheels, spinning around. Place your bets.
I think just so we can break them in, because I don't think we've really had them discussed much on the show yet. Will we do Rambo? Because I don't think we've done any Stallone yet.
No, we haven't. We haven't done any. We were going to do it last year and get around to it. So I was going to do Deer Hunter Rambo as a kind of double thing last year, like back to back. But we end up doing other stuff. So that'll be a good one to do.
Yeah, so we're gonna go, and we're gonna be a little bit sly next week, folks, and we'll go with Stallone for Rambo next week. I'm assuming we're talking First Blood, first movie.
Yeah, absolutely, first movie.
Excellent.
That's just there for name recognition. But yeah, First Blood, not the retroactively renamed it Rambo First Blood and whatever years later. Just like how they retroactively renamed Star Wars and all that.
Gonna be good, yeah. I don't know if you'll get a good sly impression out of me. You'll just have to deal with my shitty Arnie ones for the time being. But I'll try and practice. I'll try and practice between now and then.
He's pretty lazy. Bruce Willis.
Maybe I'll fight Apollo. Maybe I won't. No, I can't. I can't really.
I'll watch it again this week, and I've got out in the lounge at the moment. I've got my box sets. I've got Rambo. There's 5. Yeah, I've got Rambo 1 through 5, Rocky 1 through 6. I've got Creed somewhere, but it's out the back, and I've just got Expendables Blu-ray numbers 1 through 4. I've never watched the 4th one, so I'm probably going to watch pretty much all of those in the next week.
Yeah, I don't think I've actually seen past number 2 of Expendables, so
yeah,
I'm going to have.
They don't get better with the sequels, but it was the same price to get all 4 as buying 1 or 2.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's the same reason I bought that Batman movie box set recently. Like, I'm only going to watch 2 of them, but it was the same price to get them all.
Yeah, well, it's worth it. I mean, I bought that same set this week. I've been meaning to for a couple of years, and it's got loads of featurettes and stuff in it that make it worth the price almost alone.
Well, folks, I do hope you are looking forward to Rambo next week. But let us know for this show today: are you T1 over T2? Are you more T2 than T1? Do you love them both equally? Do you hate them? Are you one of those people who just hate the Terminator and just can't see the appeal of it?
Maybe you love Kindergarten Cop and you hate the Terminator.
Hey, look, it's a totally valid opinion to hold.
Maybe you think the Kindergarten Cop was a Terminator, it was not an infiltration model, so that's just crazy fan theory.
Maybe the Kindergarten Cop was just a Terminator who had completed its mission years before and had nothing left to do but integrate itself into society. I'm a cop, you idiot. Enough of the bad Arnie puns for me. Not a tumor. Great.
But yeah, join us next week. Come back to the carpet and we'll talk about some Rambo.
See you later, folks. Take care.
See ya.